1993 Houston Oilers were one of the most chaotic, violently talented, and wildly unpredictable teams in the history of the National Football League. They were a team of massive personalities, dramatic locker room brawls, and Super Bowl aspirations. But what happened to that franchise on a dark Texas highway on the morning of December 14th, 1993, goes far beyond the game of football. If you ask the average NFL fan about the greatest tragedies in the history of the sport, they might mention Sean Taylor, or Junior Seau, or Derek Thomas. But there is a story that the NFL has spent 30 years trying to forget. It is a story so profoundly heartbreaking and so unimaginably tragic that it is rarely spoken of today. If you clicked on this video, you know that professional athletes are not immune to the devastating fragility of human life. But what happened to Houston Oilers defensive tackle Jeff Alm wasn't just a fatal car crash. It was a sequence of events so sudden and so psychologically shattering that the human brain simply cannot comprehend it. This is the unwritten truth of the darkest 14 minutes in the history of the NFL. To understand the sheer magnitude of the tragedy, you have to understand who Jeff Alm was, and more importantly, who he was not. In the early 1990s, the NFL was filled with notorious bad boys. The league was plagued with stories of violence, bar fights, and massive egos. But Jeff Alm did not fit that description. He was a 6'6", 275-pound defensive tackle out of the University of Notre Dame. He was known by his coaches and teammates as a quiet, thoughtful giant. He wasn't the guy causing trouble at nightclubs. He was the guy who loved hunting, fishing, and spending time with his family. In 1990, the Houston Oilers drafted him in the second round. When Alm arrived in Houston, he walked into the most intense locker room in the National Football League. The 1993 Oilers were a ticking time bomb. You had head coach Jack Pardee trying to maintain order. You had the legendary, hyper-aggressive Buddy Ryan running the defense. The team was so intense that the coaches were literally throwing punches at each other on national television. Amidst all of this pure, unadulterated chaos, Jeff Alm was struggling to find his footing. By his fourth season in 1993, he wasn't a superstar. He was a rotational player fighting for snaps on a defense packed with alpha males. He was dealing with the immense, crushing pressure that comes with being a high draft pick trying to prove you belong in the NFL. But no matter how heavy the pressure of professional football got, Alm always had an anchor. He had a best friend named Sean Lynch. Jeff and Sean had known each other since childhood. They grew up together in Illinois. While Jeff went off to become a massive NFL star, and Sean went to work in the restaurant business, their bond never broke. They were more than best friends, they were brothers. In the ruthless, often lonely world of professional sports, Sean was the one person who treated Jeff not as a Houston Oiler, but simply as Jeff. In December of 1993, Sean Lynch bought a plane ticket to Houston to visit his best friend. They had a few days off. They were going to eat steak, catch up, and escape the pressure of the world. Neither of them knew they were walking into their final hours on Earth. The evening of December 13th, 1993, started like any other reunion between two lifelong friends. Jeff and Sean went out for dinner at a high-end steakhouse in Houston. By all accounts, they were having a fantastic time. They were laughing, telling stories from their childhood, and enjoying the fruits of Jeff's NFL career. They stayed out late into the night. At around 2:30 in the morning on December 14th, they decided to head home. Jeff got behind the wheel of his brand new 1993 Cadillac Eldorado. Sean got into the passenger seat. They merged onto Interstate 610, driving along the West Loop near the Galleria in Houston. The roads were mostly empty at that hour. What happened next is a matter of physics and tragedy. According to police reports, the Cadillac was traveling well over the speed limit, estimated at over 70 miles per hour on an elevated highway ramp. In a split second, something went wrong. Maybe the car drifted. Maybe Jeff took his eyes off the road for a fraction of a second to look at his friend. But at 2:45 a.m., the Cadillac Eldorado suddenly veered out of its lane. The car violently slammed into the concrete retaining wall on the side of the elevated highway. The impact was catastrophic. The Cadillac skidded along the barrier for dozens of feet before spinning out of control. When the car finally ground to a halt, the front end was utterly destroyed. Smoke poured from the engine. The passenger side window was shattered. Jeff Alm had been wearing his seatbelt. The airbag had deployed. Despite the terrifying violence of the crash, the 275-pound NFL defensive tackle had survived. He was battered, he was bruised, but he was alive. He unbuckled his seatbelt. He turned his head to the right. The passenger seat was completely empty. Sean Lynch had not been wearing his seatbelt. When the Cadillac hit the concrete barrier, the sheer kinetic force of the impact ripped the passenger door open. Sean was violently ejected from the vehicle, but he wasn't thrown onto the pavement of the highway. The car had crashed exactly on the edge of an elevated overpass. Sean Lynch was thrown into the dark Texas sky, plummeting nearly 30 feet off the edge of the bridge, crashing down onto an embankment below. Jeff Alm stumbled out of the wrecked Cadillac. He ran to the edge of the concrete barrier and looked over the side into the darkness. When his eyes adjusted to the shadows, he saw the broken body of his childhood best friend lying motionless in the dirt below. Psychologists call it acute traumatic shock. The human brain simply cannot process that level of sudden, incomprehensible horror. In that moment, standing on the cold concrete of Interstate 610, Jeff Alm was no longer an NFL football player. He was a 25-year-old kid who realized that his best friend in the entire world, the man who had flown across the country just to see him, was dead. And worse, he realized that he was the one driving the car. The guilt was absolute. It was suffocating. It was a weight that no human being could ever be expected to carry. According to the toxicology reports released later, Alm had been drinking that night, registering a blood alcohol level over the legal limit. Whether it was the alcohol, the concussive shock of the crash, or the sheer, blinding agony of losing his brother, Jeff Alm's mind shattered in the dark. He didn't run. He didn't call for help. Instead, Jeff Alm walked back to his crushed Cadillac. He opened the trunk. He took out a pistol-grip pump-action shotgun that he kept for hunting. In a frantic, desperate display of sheer panic and sorrow, he fired 2 shots into the air, like a distress signal into the void of the night. And then, as a few distant cars approached the wreckage, the giant defensive tackle sat down on the side of the highway, right near the edge where his best friend had fallen. He placed the barrel of the shotgun against his own head, and he pulled the trigger. When the Houston police finally arrived at the scene, they found a tragedy so profound that hardened detectives wept. They found the body of Sean Lynch down on the embankment, and they found the body of Jeff Alm on the highway above. 2 childhood friends, separated by 30 feet of concrete, their lives extinguished in a matter of 14 minutes. The shockwave that ripped through the National Football League was unlike anything before or since. The Houston Oilers organization was completely paralyzed with grief. Just 5 days after the crash, the Oilers had to fly to Pittsburgh to play the Steelers. They wore a black decal with Alm's number, 76, on the back of their helmets. Nobody cared about the game. They were playing with ghosts on the field. To this day, the story of Jeff Alm remains the most heartbreaking incident in NFL history. It is a terrifying reminder of how quickly life can be stripped away and the unimaginable, destructive power of survivor's guilt. Jeff Alm wasn't a criminal. He was a young man who made a terrible mistake behind the wheel. And in a moment of blinding, incomprehensible agony, he chose to punish himself rather than live in a world without his best friend. The 1990s was an era defined by extreme tragedy and extreme chaos. While the Houston Oilers were dealing with an unthinkable loss, their in-state rivals, the Dallas Cowboys, were dealing with an entirely different kind of darkness. The Dallas Cowboys of the 1990s won 3 Super Bowls, but behind closed doors, the team was operating the largest, most reckless cocaine and party scandal the NFL had ever seen. If you want to know the unwritten truth about how the greatest dynasty of the 90s almost destroyed itself from the inside out, click the video on your screen right now. You won't believe what they were hiding.